is weaker as well. So potentially, black's just going to build up very comfortably now with a move like rook d4, hitting both e4 and this knight. So that would be a very nice square for black to use along this d file. And maybe he didn't want to be passive here, so he kind of did a kind of rebellious move here. If he wanted to keep as solid as possible with minimal concessions, then maybe the way to do it here is actually knight d2. Of course, it's easy for any patzer like me to say this in retrospect with the help of Rybka and other stuff. But knight d2, and here's a Rybka variation I looked at earlier. So knight takes e4, and say black wants to play this move rook d4. It seems as though white does have defensive resources now to hold this position and maybe even coordinate rooks on the f file. So this is just an example of what sort of counterplay could have happened with rook f7, and maybe white keeps equality here in this rook and pawn ending. This is very far away from the game, and this would be much more favourable than the game, but it would require an invitation to use the d4 square and leave the pawn on e4 and do this seemingly humble knight retreat. But no, Topalov, he plays e takes f5, and this looks just diabolical now for this diagonal being torn open. So not only has this bishop issue been solved, it's been solved with a vengeance against the white king now, being a lethal weapon, with white not having an equivalent light squared bishop to defend on that diagonal. And not only that, the bishop earlier had created some concessions with these highly committal pawn moves, so there's lots of weaknesses lurking just to be opened up now. So Anand plays the logical move, e4, rip open the diagonal. Topalov obliges, fe4, now queen takes e4. Now here would be an interesting continuation, queen h1 mate, just to demonstrate the diagonal is very, very dangerous now. So Topalov has to be careful with his king, and he doesn't want to put it on f1 either. I think just queen h1 just wins the queen here after the king moves. So the king hasn't got too many squares. It runs to h3, and it looks as though, is this an amateur game or what? Because surely a 2800 does not do this with king safety. It does not give black from a seemingly drawing weapon, where even Yusupov has only won 3 games in his entire career with this system, giving this absolutely lethal bishop on the diagonal, all for the cost of this isolated c-pawn. I mean, this is just unbelievable that this has happened, that white's king is now on h3, used as target practice now for Anand to do some seemingly logical, solid and simple chess strengthening moves. So his first move in that respect is now just rook d4, just adding more pressure on this row, immediately attacking the knight. And when I was spectating this game on chessgames.com, I thought maybe black's next move is going to be like g5 with the threat of queen h4 check takes, and then rook h4 will be mate. But g5 is not needed for black to accelerate this attack. This knight, which is now attacked, it just goes to e3 here, and Anand plays a really, really good move, a retreating move but an attacking move. It's king hunt time, and this is, I think, maybe just Topalov's nerves has got the better of him. He's actually depressed by the previous course of this game, that black's Lasker defense is not usually this aggressive. He's messed up. He hasn't got his structural compensation. He's got an extra pawn which is kind of academic because his king safety has been blown apart. The diagonal has been blown apart. And Anand now has the luxury of, threatening simple mate threats. So he plays actually queen e8. Simple mate threat of like queen h5 mate. Because, that bishop is stopping king g2 now. So how does Topalov defend this? Well, he plays g4, depriving the queen of the h5 square. And now there's a very nice undermining move from Anand. notice how these rooks are really striking left like this. So potentially, you know, if a move like g5 and takes, you know, this rook can gain access to h7 to plough into that white king, and this rook is also looking at the h4 square to plough into the white king. So Anand actually plays h5 here, which is simply just renewing the threat of hg and then queen h5 check. And now we see a seemingly absolutely ridiculous move to be seen in the World Championship match. The move king h4. The king is taking a walk. You know, what is this? Is this that classic short game where he marched his king up the board? But in that game, you know, Nigel Short's opponent didn't have any counterplay. The king safety wasn't an issue. But here, and apparently Topalov was upset about this in the conference or something after the game, that Anand had not simply played here the move queen d8 check. This would seem to be the most incisive continuation, the most clinical continuation. The move Anand played was actually g5 check, which still carries on the attack, just not so accurately. Let's have a quick look at queen d8 check. You see f6, and now like hg is threatening all sorts of nasties here. In particular, just g takes and then rook h7, for example. So say knight takes g4, g takes here. So rook h7 is becoming an available resource. So say rook f5, check. Rook takes g4, check, just to expose the king a bit more. And in this kind of position, things like queen d1 and queen g1 are very dangerous. So queen d1, queen g1 is going to be mate. And in this position, if rook f3, then again this queen g1 and then rook g7. So you see how the white king is getting sliced tactically in this position. Black's just got far too much counterplay, and this bishop is far too powerful. But Anand, you know, perhaps lets Topalov off a little bit, or maybe, you know, he's prolonging Topalov's torture here. He plays the move g5 check. So fg, and now we see queen takes g6. So the clear idea now is rook takes g4, and if knight takes queen takes g4 is mate, just with the queen and pawn supporting it. So Topalov plays now queen f1, because he's preparing just to sidestep his king to h3 after rook g4. So rook takes g4, king h3. So how can Anand progress here? Now, because I'm a patzer, I was actually thinking, you know, rook g7 isn't that good here as well? That's a logical like trebling on the g file. That wouldn't be so hot as the game continuation. Let's have a quick look. Check, because here I wonder if you can guess it. White could actually neutralise black's attack totally in this position and achieve equality with the move queen f5, getting the queens off. So that's something to be totally avoided, rook g7. The most clinical move is apparently rook f7. So here is the clinical continuation. Rook takes f7. Now bishop g2 check. And if knight takes g2, I wonder if you can spot this if I give you 5 seconds. Nice little mate in 2 puzzle. Okay, there will be rook h4 check here. And if king takes or knight takes, there's queen g4 mate. So in both those circumstances, queen g4 mate. So that's very attractive, rook f7, what it sets up. This idea of bishop g2 and then rook h4. Okay, what Anand did was actually rook e7, which has other tactical ideas. So if he can exchange off with a positional sack or tactical sacrifice, this knight, get rid of it, he'll have bishop g2 on the cards, which is actually a lethal square to be able to make use of. So he's inviting this rook f5 check. But here, if we look at this position now, king g7, this king h7 is also crushing here, I think, because queen f5, this is different now with the rook on e7, because there's rook e3 and bishop g2 is mate. So anyway, that's also perhaps crushing, but Anand played king g7. And now you might wonder, well, isn't this looking dangerous, knight f5 check? Okay, Anand's faced with this check. What does he play? He actually plays king h7. Now you might wonder, why not try and munch, this rook? Okay,